Hello friends, my name is Madeline, and I wish I could tell you where this idea came from, but at some point when my reading kind of slowed down and I was trying to think about content that I could put up on here, I had this idea. Basically, I thought it would be fun to use a random number generator to select two books that I've read. Then, in a playoff of 6 degrees of separation, I would have to connect those two books using only other books that I've read. At the time that I started this exercise, I had 490 books marked as read on Goodreads. So I asked Google.com to select two random numbers for me, and it selected 153 and 166. I matched that up to my Goodreads shelf, so what I had marked as read on Goodreads, and those two corresponding books are Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur and Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. And now I will connect those books in 6 degrees. Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur is a collection of modern poetry that focuses on themes of survival, whether that is survival of abuse or survival of loss or even surviving societal expectations. These are, for the most part, short, punchy poems that are told with extreme economy. There were some longer poems in there, but to be honest, it was the very short couple of line poems that managed to capture an entire experience that really worked for me. Some of Kaur's longer poetry loses that punch and honestly ends up reading more like just an extended sentence. It's a heavy subject matter and some of it felt a little bit repetitive. Overall, I was really impressed with the collection, and I don't know that enjoyment is the right word to use about the reading experience, but I appreciated it, and especially appreciated the ebb and flow of the collection overall and the way that it captured that idea of milk and honey. As you can probably tell from the title, there was imagery surrounding like bees and honey, and some of her doodles captured that as well. Some versions of the cover actually have a bee on the cover, which is where I got my inspiration to go next to Bone Gap by Laura Ruby. This is YA fabulism about a very strange little town. We follow two brothers, Finn and Sean, whose mother up and left them when Sean turned 18, so he had to kind of abandon his dreams of college and what he wanted to do with his life in order to take care of his little brother Finn. Sean ends up dating a beautiful but mysterious woman named Rosa, but then she suddenly disappears as well. Sean kind of takes it for what it is that she left them, but Finn is convinced that he saw somebody kidnapping Rosa, but nobody will believe him because he can't describe the person who took her. We follow Finn, Rosa, and a few other characters in this small town in a story that is ultimately about what you see isn't always what you get. This is a very strange story, and I always preface it with that. I love it dearly and I recommend it, but I always like to tell people this is a strange story. It is a story that weaves the sometimes unexplained magic and fabulism of this town with the very real and grounded and heartbreaking themes and characters. I love everything that it had to say about beauty, and specifically about how beauty, or the lack of beauty, kind of imparts certain societal expectations, especially on women. This story is loosely adapted from Greek mythology, particularly on the Hades and Persephone myth, and I know that lots of people who are fans of Hades and Persephone really like the idea of what if Hades and Persephone but better. Hades didn't kidnap her, Hades wasn't a rapist. But this takes a look at a Hades-like character who is in fact a kidnapper, and one that believes that he fell in love with the Persephone character kind of at first sight. So it really ties into that idea of beauty and what the ownership people feel over those who are beautiful kind of is. So it was very, very interesting. We did a podcast episode on Bone Gap, so if you want to hear our full thoughts on this very strange story, I will link that for you guys. From here, we'll go to another mythological retelling, and that is Circe by Madeline Miller. In this book, we essentially get the story of Circe, the daughter of Helios, from when she is banished from her father's court to a deserted island and through her life. I loved this book because it really captured two moods, kind of the action and adventure of a journey book and the quiet introspection of a character-driven book. I used to love Greek mythology when I was in elementary school, particularly because we spent like a semester going through the Odyssey, reading through the Odyssey, and we had to like memorize Odysseus's journey and memorize everyone he talked to. It was like very very intense and very involved, but that kind of started up my love of Greek mythology when I was younger. I haven't kept up with it or refreshed my memory very recently, but reading this story was such a treat because I kept hearing about things that I was like, oh yeah, oh this story, and these characters kept popping up in Circe's story. I also loved Cersei as a character, flaws and all. I really thought that I understood her motivation, I understood her decisions and her actions, even when I was like, girl, you're doing something bad or something wrong. Like, I understood where she was coming from. Circe was published on April 10th, 2018. Also published on April 10th, 2018, space opera by Catherynne and Valente. Valente is one of my favorite authors. She is the one who wrote one of my favorite series of all time, the Fairyland series. I talk about this series all the time on my channel, and I have a full review of the series up, so I will link that for you guys as well. This story, space opera, is billed as a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy meets Eurovision. I would throw in a sprinkle of the Hunger Games as well, because the entire premise is that there is this singing competition, but the loser's race gets exterminated. So this is the first time that the human race is participating, and we follow the members of a washed up band as they try to pull this together and represent Team Earth. I don't have any strong attachments or feelings about Hitchhiker's Guide or Eurovision, so this was a strange reading experience for me. There were passages that were just unfairly brilliant and beautifully written and just funny and just everything that Catherynne and Valente is. The introduction, the first page of this book or so, was just absolute brilliance. But in between all of those shining moments, sometimes it felt too dense and I felt like I wasn't connecting with the characters entirely. So it was a very mixed reading experience for me. I ended it thinking that maybe one day I'll go back and maybe reading it slower or something like that, or for the second time, would help me appreciate it. But yeah, overall it was a mixed experience with some really bright shining spots. From space opera, we're going to an actual space opera, as in a story set in space with high drama. And that is Old Man's War by Scalzi. Basically, in the future, humanity has figured out how to exist in space, but it means a lot of war with other aliens. In order to help keep feeding a standing army, humans have figured out a way to kind of reverse the aging process, and so they have signups for this army, but only basically after you're old, after you turn 75. So basically they can put you in a young body, but you retain the wisdom and the experience of age. Our main character, John Perry, signs up for the army on his 75th birthday and basically resigns himself to never coming back to Earth again because he's going to go fight in this army. If he can survive the 2 years that he signed up for the army, he'll be rewarded handsomely. I thought this was such a great premise. I loved the world building and the technology in the story itself as well, and John Perry was a really interesting character. I thought there were a lot of funny moments, and the way that he interacts with people and specifically with technology was also very intriguing. It is heavy on like war tactics and there is some like fighting and gruesomeness and stuff, but I actually appreciated it in the story. And finishing on books written by men named John, Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This is the story of a 16-year-old named Ava who kind of unwillingly gets brought into this investigation about a missing billionaire because there is a monetary reward attached to it, and she ends up kind of befriending the billionaire's son, and it gets very complicated because of that relationship, and also because Ava has a lot going on with like school and relationships and her own mental health. I thought that the best part of this story was indeed the mental health representation. The descriptions of the thought spirals that Ava experiences were so vivid, and I thought that it was great to read about how we have a lack of words to really voice the experience of pain and to voice the experiences of like our internal lives. The metaphors that Ava ultimately employs to describe those things were really well done. The plot propping up the character work was a little flimsy to me. I think that the story tried to tell you that, like, give you a premise and then kind of swerve and say like, this premise is not the thing is actually Ava's mental health, and I can see where that was going, but it made that plot prop feel really weak in a way that I just couldn't get over at the end of the story. I had issues with a couple of the characters in this book as well. Ava's best friend in particular, and in the portrayal of of their friendship was really weird, and I don't think that it was addressed in a way that I found satisfactory. Like, they did some bad things to each other and just moved on without addressing it in a way, again, that just felt unsatisfying to me personally. This was another mixed experience for me. Like I said, the mental health representation and the descriptions of all of that were fantastic. Some of the plot, the mystery, and the characters were not as well done. And that's it. I connected milk and honey with turtles all the way down. If you are interested in doing this, I encourage you to. You can do it the way that I did, with a random number generator based on books on your shelves or books that you've read or marked as read on Goodreads. I contained it to books that I had read, because if you just open up every book ever, I think it gets a little less challenging, but you know, you do you. I also figured that I could leave you with some random numbers to create kind of a chain. So if you would like to do this after viewing this video and would like to use the numbers that I pick for you, I pick numbers 5 and 35. Check out books 5 and 35 on any of your physical or e-shelves and connect them in 6 degrees of separation. Good luck, and thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. This is like deceptively simple as I went through it, but it took me a long time to get the connections. Like, I would get 2 or 3 books in and then miss the link for the others, and then you kind of have to figure out where to tweak one, or like what path to take basically. And when I found space opera to link them to Old Man's War, I like literally hollered.